Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're tackling the world of consultative selling. You guys sent in some really interesting excerpts from The Art of Consultative Selling. And, well, we're going to dig into them. We're going to break them down and try to help you be better at selling things.
Sounds good to me.
So, I used to think selling was all about being that stereotypical, fast-talking, slick kind of guy. But this book, it kind of paints a different picture, doesn't it?
It does. It really presents it as much more of a strategic process. It's like a game of chess, you know? You're
Yeah.
always thinking a few moves ahead.
Exactly. And that brings us to one of the big takeaways right off the bat, preparation. This book really emphasizes knowing your client before you even think about picking up the phone to call them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about going deeper than just, basic knowledge.
Hmm.
And the book suggests looking at things like, have they had any recent company announcements? What are they posting on LinkedIn? That kind of thing.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's almost like being a detective, right? You're gathering these little clues.
Yeah, precisely. And it helps you ask very targeted questions that are going to resonate with that particular client.
Yeah.
And they're going to know that you've done your homework. They're going to see that you care about their needs.
Yeah. Okay. So I've done my research. I'm feeling prepped and ready to go. What's the next step? How do I actually engage with them in a way that really sets the stage for that consultative approach?
Well, that's where the art of asking insightful questions comes in. Think of it like this. You're not there to pitch a product. You're there to uncover a need.
So instead of just launching into whatever my sales script is, I should be more like a investigative journalist trying to understand their story.
Yeah, exactly. And the book stresses asking
Mhm.
open-ended questions that encourage the client to share their perspective.
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, I've definitely been guilty of asking those kind of generic questions. How can I help you? That sort of thing.
Yeah, it's a common trap. And, those generic questions usually lead to pretty generic answers. Instead, you want to tailor those questions to the insights you gleaned during your pre-call preparation.
Right, right. So the prep really is kind of the foundation for everything, huh? It informs my questions and it helps me build that rapport from the get-go.
You're getting it. And this approach, it not only helps you understand those needs, but it positions you as a trusted advisor, as someone who really understands their world.
It's amazing how just like shifting your mindset a little bit can make such a big difference. But I'm curious, once you've got that conversation flowing, how do you actually make sure you're really listening to what they're saying and not just waiting for your turn to talk?
Yeah, that's where the idea of active listening comes in.
Mm.
And it's a skill that goes beyond just hearing the words. It's about understanding the nuances and the emotions behind what they're saying.
Yeah. Oh man, I've definitely been guilty of like nodding along while I'm really just thinking about what I'm going to say next. What are some of the tips that the book gives on becoming a better active listener?
Well, the book highlights a few key things. The book highlights a few key things. First, pay attention to their body language.
Mhm.
Are they leaning in, engaged, or are they sitting back with their arms crossed?
Yeah.
Maybe a little guarded.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't even thought about that. It's like those nonverbal cues. They really add a whole other layer to the conversation.
They do. And don't forget about tone of voice.
Mhm.
Are they hesitant, enthusiastic? Maybe there's a hint of frustration in there. Those subtle cues can often reveal more than their words.
You really got to be like a detective and a therapist, kind of reading between the lines, tuning into what's not being said.
Yeah. You could say that the goal is to get a holistic understanding of their needs, not just what's on the surface.
Okay, so we've done our prep work, we've asked insightful questions, we're actively listening, but at some point we do have to transition into talking about our product or service, right?
Right. But the key is, you're not just giving them a generic pitch. You're showcasing how your offering is a tailored solution to the specific needs that you've uncovered.
So instead of like a one-size-fits-all approach, it's more like presenting them with a custom-made suit that fits their challenges perfectly.
I like that. That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And the book really emphasizes the importance of value creation. You're not just listing features, you're demonstrating how those features will directly translate into tangible benefits for the client.
Yeah. So whether that's increased efficiency, cost savings, helping them achieve their business goals, whatever it is, you're showing them how your solution is the key to unlocking those outcomes.
Precisely. And this approach goes a long way in building trust and credibility, because it shows that you're not just trying to make a sale, you're genuinely invested in their success.
This all makes so much sense, but I think a lot of people myself included. We kind of get tripped up when it comes to handling objections. It's almost like that fight or flight response kicks in.
I understand. But the art of consultative selling has a really interesting take on objections. It argues that they're not roadblocks, they're opportunities.
Okay, now I got to hear more about this. How can an objection be an opportunity?
Well, think of it like this. Objections are those missing puzzle pieces that help you see the complete picture.
So instead of getting defensive, we should actually welcome objections as a chance to learn more.
Exactly. Objections provide valuable insights into the client's concerns and priorities. They might be hesitant about the price, unsure about a particular feature, or worried about switching from a competitor.
That makes sense. But once we've acknowledged the objection, how do we actually address it without derailing the entire conversation?
The book outlines a really strategic three-step approach.
Ooh, I love a good framework. Tell me more.
Okay, the first step is to listen empathetically. Really hear them out and acknowledge their feelings.
So instead of jumping in with a rebuttal, we validate their concern, even if we don't necessarily agree with it.
Exactly. Something as simple as, I understand that budget is a major consideration, can go a long way in building trust. It shows you're not just trying to push a product, you genuinely care about their needs.
Okay, that makes sense. So we listen empathetically. Then what?
The next step is to clarify the objection. This is where you ask those probing questions to get to the root of the concern.
So for example, if they say the price is too high, we don't just throw a discount at them. We try to understand why they feel that way.
You got it. We might ask, what aspects of the pricing are you finding challenging? Or what budget parameters are you working within? By getting to the why behind their objection, you can tailor your response much more effectively.
I'm starting to see how this approach can actually strengthen the relationship by showing that we're genuinely trying to understand their perspective. But at some point, we do have to address the objection itself, right?
Absolutely. That's the third step.
Right.
But now armed with a deeper understanding of their concern, you can respond in a way that directly addresses their needs.
So if they're balking at the price, we might highlight the long-term return on investment. Or if they're concerned about a missing feature, we could showcase how existing features can achieve a similar outcome.
You're on the right track. The key is to be prepared with information, alternative solutions, or even creative ways to reframe the value proposition.
But all of this sounds like a delicate dance. How do we navigate these objections without turning the conversation into a confrontation?
That's where the book's emphasis on professionalism comes in. It's about maintaining a calm, respectful demeanor throughout the entire process.
So even if the conversation gets heated, we remember that we're not trying to win an argument. We're trying to find a solution that works for everyone.
Right. By staying professional and focused on collaboration, you demonstrate respect for the client and build that all-important sense of trust.
You know, it strikes me that this approach of turning objections into opportunities could actually transform the entire sales dynamic. It shifts the focus from us versus them to us working together.
That's the beauty of consultative selling. It's about building genuine partnerships based on mutual benefit.
I'm really starting to see how this goes beyond just closing a deal. It's about fostering relationships that last.
Exactly. And that brings us to one of the most important takeaways from the book. It's the long game. The book, it really stresses how important it is to create those relationships that benefit both you and the client in the long term.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's got to be a lot easier to nurture a relationship you already have than always be out there hustling, trying to find new leads, right?
Absolutely. And something the book points out is this approach can actually lead to a much more fulfilling and rewarding sales career for you.
Yeah, I can see that. Takes pressure off, you know? It's not just about closing that next deal. It's about building those connections.
It becomes less about transactions and more about, those win-win partnerships.
You know, it's funny, as we've been talking about this, I've been thinking this whole consultative approach, it could really be applied to so many areas of life, not just, sales.
Well, absolutely. I mean, think about negotiating a business deal or collaborating on a project, even those tough conversations you have with family and friends sometimes.
Yeah, it's really about understanding everybody's perspective and really listening to their concerns and then trying to find a solution that works for everybody.
Exactly. You got it. It's a valuable skill set to have, and it can really enrich any interaction you have.
Well, this has been a really eye-opening deep dive. It's definitely given me a whole new way to think about what it means to sell and even just, communicate effectively in general.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And just remember, it all starts with preparation asking those insightful questions, and genuinely wanting to understand those client needs.
And don't forget about turning those objections into opportunities. Who knew that something that seems like a roadblock could actually help you out so much?
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So before we wrap up today, let's give our listeners something to think about. If you could only ask one question, one insightful question, to figure out a potential client's biggest need, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a good one. It really gets to the heart of this whole consultative selling thing, doesn't it?
It does, and I think I'm going to be thinking about that one for a while myself. A huge thanks to you for joining us today and sharing all your expertise.
It was my pleasure. I always enjoy these conversations.
And to all of you listening, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the world of consultative selling. We hope you learned a few things that will help you build those strong relationships and be successful in all your interactions. We'll see you next time.